but right now it's me and Sarah, and we're going to talk about the 4 paths back. You know us as the founders of this swing shift. We've been at this for about 4 years now, and we've worked with really thousands of women when you include some of the big events that we've spoken with. And what we found is that the people who are looking to get back after a break or looking to switch roles or careers have a particular strategy that they employ when they're going back. So what we want to do, some of you may know this, some of you, this might be a new idea. We're going to walk through the 4 approaches, and we're going to use a case study model. So we're going to talk about people. Some of them are real people. You might even know them. We're going to talk about how they did it and then what their approach was and what it's good for. So but before we do that, Sarah, why do you need a job search strategy? We talk about this all the time. And we found that as I said, when people are moving, they have to have a strategy. Part of the reason is it provides structure and focus to your job search. Otherwise, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. The other thing about having a job search strategy, in any strategy, is that you know better what you're going to say yes to, and in some ways, what are you going to say no to, right? It really helps you articulate your pitch and focus on your personal brand, because you know, well, what direction am I heading in, and what should I be focusing on and talking about? And it also gives you a networking roadmap. It gives you an idea of what path to follow as you're going in. So let's take this and look at what the 4 strategies are. The first one is a boomerang, when you go back to what you did before. Lily pad is when you take maybe a step to the side, or maybe even a step back as a way to then jump to the next job. So it's sort of, you know, a boomerang for people who maybe have been out a little bit longer. Try and buy is when you want to try something different and you're not quite sure, or you want to go back, but you're not exactly sure if that's what you want to do, if you want to try it with a different twist. And then there's pro bono to paid. And we have many examples of people successfully employing all of these strategies. So we're gonna talk first about, and Sarah, am I doing this one or are you doing this one?
You can go ahead and start with the boomerang.
Okay, let's talk about boomerang. And this is, I will say, this is a term I stole from a friend who works over at Microsoft. They told me, you know, we're hiring a lot of boomerangs. And I said, what is that? And they said, oh, it's people who come back. And so in this case, we were working with someone. She had been a stay-at-home mom for about 5 years. And she had a very rich background in analytics, and in search, but she really didn't want to focus on that going forward. She really wanted to get into more of a program management role. She dedicated her time to looking for 9 months, and she did a great job of networking. And what she really employed as her strategy was contacting past managers and peers to get the word out. And she had a very consistent and productive informational interview cadence. And she would go on interviews in coffee shops. She said she met somebody on a sidewalk and they went for a dog walk because they both had dogs and they liked them. And she was very targeted in this. And she said, I want to get a program management role at a mid-sized company. And while she had a couple of interviews that didn't go all the way through to a job offer, as the result of one of the informational interviews she had, she was at I think it was a neighborhood party when we could all get together in the neighborhood, and somebody said, hey, I hear you're looking for a program management role. Our mutual friend who we used to work with at this other company, it turned out it was Adobe, is looking for someone up here. Long story short, she landed that role, and it was because she did a very targeted job of reaching to her past and present peer network and being very clear about what it was she wanted. In her case, she said, I just wanted to go back to what I was doing. I really liked it. I really liked that company. And I wanted to work with either people from that company whose cultural fit is aligned with my values, or at the company itself. And that is how it worked out. So For her, and maybe you want to take this approach, a boomerang really is just going back to what you did before. So you go back to your former company, maybe you contact your former manager or peers. It's really good for a simple return to role and simple return to industry, okay? Boomerang doesn't work so well if you're looking to switch, if you're looking to do a different role, or if you're looking to move to a different industry, okay? Now, here's the caveat, right? It can work if an individual sponsors you. So in her case, she wanted to go, she was a program manager before, but with an analytics bent, she wanted to go to more general program management. The person who sponsored her said, I know she can do this program management role. So for you, if you're looking to switch something up and you have a former peer or manager that you know will sponsor you, a boomerang can work in that way. So it's great because you're a known quantity and you have familiar skills, right? You can get in and hit the ground running fast. The cons, there's a potential for the same old, right? The things that, the things that bugged you before are gonna, bug you again. But it's a great strategy if you just wanna go back. Now,
Okay.
Sarah, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, I will talk about this. This woman had gone through our program. She'd been a stay-at-home mom for 11 years. And then she decided to go become a consultant. Now, this type of approach is called the lily pad approach. And it's the lily pad for a few reasons, but really it's to potentially take a role that maybe isn't your dream job first in order to lily pad to that dream role down the road. It's a strategy. You're doing it. It's a targeted path for you. So what she did was she did a 4-month dedicated search. So she treated this like a full-time job, and she landed a consulting role at Microsoft through a consulting company, and it was an 18-month contract. So she took the role. She knew that it wasn't going to be exactly what she wanted, but she also realized, like, this is my opportunity to gain some momentum and get my feet back into the workforce, really figure out what the market is doing right now. What is this consultant economy all about? How does this work, right? So this was a really great path for her to be able to learn all of that. And then while she was on that 18-month contract, knowing that it wasn't the place that she wanted to spend her career, she continued to network and interview at other consulting companies, because through that time, she actually realized, I like consulting. I like what it brings me, the flexibility it brings me, but the company that I'm with right now isn't the best fit. All consulting companies are very different. They offer very different benefits, and you have to kind of ask around and sometimes find out for yourself if it's a good fit or not. So she knew she liked consulting, but she didn't want to be where she was. So at the same time, she was still dedicating a certain amount of time of her week to network and interview for future roles. And a lot of times, people are like, well, I can't, in good conscience, take a role and then be interviewing during it. And let me just tell you, that's not how it works anymore. The loyalty is great. And if that is something that is really, really important to you, then give yourself a year. Give yourself a year at a role, which is a really good amount of time to learn some new skills, but don't ever stop networking. The people that you're meeting in this role, develop relationships with, keep having informational interviews. They're not job interviews, but you're still, keeping those contacts going. Don't ever stop doing that. And don't feel bad about leaving a job if it's not a good fit. People do it all the time now. It's really common. And so don't stay at a job just because you feel like you owe them something. It's not how it is. Okay. So with that, the lily pad, so she actually, Nancy, can you go back real quick? I just want to make sure that, so during that time, not only was she networking, but she was also building up her confidence and really getting a good understanding of the market, the consulting market, and where she fit in. So when she did jump to her dream job at Slalom, she knew the culture, what compensation she should be getting. She negotiated a senior title because she'd had recent work experience, and she was able to really advocate for herself and articulate her skills and where they fit. So in her words, she would have never been able to have done that if she would have not taken this less desirable role initially. Okay, next slide, please. So let's go in a little bit more detail to a lily pad. Again, it can be one step back from where you left the workforce, and some people have a very strong opinions about this, and there's no right or wrong about this, but we say we're not advocating for you to take an entry-level job. Absolutely not. But you may be taking, it's not a straight line anymore. It can be a little bit jagged to get to where you want to be. And so you want to be open to taking other opportunities in order to lead you to where you want to go. And if it's a strategy move, then it doesn't feel as hard to do that, right? If it's part of your strategy. So this is a really great path if you are going to be switching roles, especially if you need to gain a new skill set, right? This is how you can break into a new industry, maybe take a step down to be able to get those skill sets up to speed. And then it's also good if you're looking to return to former work. You know, maybe you had a really big job and you managed a ton of people, and you're like, you know what, I'm good for taking an individual contributor role, kind of get back into it, get my stuff situated, my home life, work, figuring all that out. It's okay to do that, and then be able to be like, okay, now I can take on more responsibility in, 6 to 12 months, a year, 18 months, whatever that might be. So the one thing about the lily pad is this is not a place, if it's not a perfect role or your dream role, don't stay there. This is really hard for some people because they get in and then they start feeling stuck. So we want you to keep that momentum. That is the whole point of the lily pad. That's the whole point of the strategy, is you need to make sure that you are setting yourself up to jump to a new role, or hop to a new role in this case, within 6, 12 months, maybe 18 months, depending on what works for you. And then the pros, of course, of this strategy is you get back in, and you get back in fast, right? So instead of spending a year looking for a job, you have a job, and now you're having different conversations that next 6 months, because you're not talking about your career break, you're talking about current work that you're doing. So it kind of puts you in a different place when you're on interviews. Okay, so now moving to try and buy. Nancy, do you want to take this one?
Yes, I will. And sorry, I goofed on the goofed on the slide. I didn't mean
Oh
to
yeah, I guess
move
here, let me do, I guess cons. We can,
Yeah.
Again, we talked about this, short term, you will need to jump again, which can be hard, but that is the whole point of this strategy.
Right. And that, that's why it's a lily pad.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk a little bit about a gal who had been home for 17 years. And, that's a long time. Some of you maybe have faced this. She was very, very interesting. She took a 6-month sporadic search. She had worked in technical marketing and in the technology industry. And she was looking, but she was stopping and starting. She had some family time constraints. So in her case, she took a part-time role really below her skill level, right? She was a senior manager when she stepped back, but it had been quite a while. And she also said she didn't want to return to the heavy pace that a technology company required. She was very mission focused, so she wanted to work on something that was female forward, and she had the opportunity to work. And frankly, she worked as a building host at first at the Riveter co-working space, and so that's how she started. She got in and she worked, and it fit her schedule. It was 10 to 20 hours a week, and she checked people in and made coffee. And this is somebody, again, who had a very big career, but had also been away for a while and wanted to try something new. So what happened in her case that was that as the company expanded, they realized very quickly that she not only was she capable of doing much more than making coffee and checking people in, she also said yes to pretty much anything they asked her to do. So they said, hey, do you know how to do a building rollout? And she had worked on the operations side and said, yes, I can. They said, hey, can you travel around and open up our new facilities? And she said, yes, I can. So she was very open to these new opportunities. And when we talk with her about that, she said the reason she did it was she felt like she wasn't, she wasn't dying to do all of those new roles, but she was dying to learn a new skill set and to move in a new direction. And after 18 months, they basically, said, we need you full time. You're an essential part of our team. And they gave her enhanced responsibilities, a bigger title, more benefits. And she was able to work that job and make it work for her. Because she said, well, I need time off in the summer. I've got kids home. I need some, time working at home. This is when we all wanted to work at home rather than had to work at home. And they accommodated that. And they did so because she proved herself on the job. And so this is a great, whoops, sorry. I've got the hot fingers today. This is a good example of a try and buy. So this is a good example of when you want to test a role or an industry out. And now she did a twofer. She went for a new role and a new industry. Usually we say try one or the other, but in this case, she went for it. And she also put a set time period on it. At the time when we were working with her, she said, I'm just going to do this for a year and I'm just going to see what it's about, but I need to get back in and I need to do something. So I think this is a good example of somebody who had this work to her advantage, right? So it's great for switching a role or switching industry, or in her case, both. Typically, like a lily pad, it's a short-term role. It's a contract or a freelance engagement. And like the lily pad, it's an opportunity to make new contacts and learn new skills. In her case, she sequentially moved up that career ladder within that organization very quickly. She wasn't sure if she was going to like it. And she said she'll tell you now, there were things about it she really liked and other things that maybe she didn't like as much, but now she's got relevant recent work experience. And I think her confidence is very high in whatever it is she's doing now and what she's going to do next. So the pros of this is paid work, right? She got paid, and she'll tell you at first, not very much, but she acquired a new set of skills very, very quickly. She got a very rich, broad, and public network of contacts, and it tested her hypothesis about, well, does she want to work in this new industry and in this new role? And she and I are friendly, and she said, there were things that I brought from my marketing experience that I used there, and there were other things that I learned as I went along. And so this is somebody who's mid-career. I think that she has no regrets about taking the initial role, nor does she have regrets about how it progressed, right? It worked out very well for her. Now, these roles do have a higher risk reward factor, right? So you could go in and you could fail, right? It's something new and maybe it doesn't fit quite right. Maybe they don't think you fit. Maybe you think they don't fit. The other thing is that contract employers do take a larger chunk of your paycheck. Staffing companies are great for these try and buy roles, and sometimes for lily pad as well. But that is something you want to keep in mind. Our thinking on this is go in, take the job, do it to the very best of your abilities. And then, as Sarah said, at the right time, either lily pad to the next role or move up within the organization. And then I will hand it back over to Sarah, who's going to talk about pro bono to paid.
Okay, so this is actually one of my favorite strategies, I think, just because many of us are already doing pro bono work or volunteer work, whether that's with our schools, with local nonprofits, helping a friend launch a business, just out of the goodness of our hearts, like whatever that might be. We're just doers and helpers, right? And so let's make the most out of that time that you're helping. So this is an example of a woman who was at home for 7 years, and she was in communications, and she was looking to get back into communications for education, essentially. And her search took a little bit longer, about 2 years, but that was really because there was a lot of stops and starts due to family demands, which many of us are feeling right now during this pandemic. There's a lot on our plates. There's an emotional toll that's happening. Finding a job is hard work. And so we're all feeling this, right? Which is okay. Every path, every search is different. But really what we want to highlight, and what this gal had done, is she decided, okay, I have some time, I'm not working, I'm searching, I might as well put my skills to use that's gonna actually give me something in return. So I'm gonna be very thoughtful about my volunteering. So she was gonna join the Association for Women in Communications anyways. That was part of her networking plan. She was going to attend the events. She was going to be there involved. And she said, why don't I volunteer with the association and do more stuff with them? And so she helped them with their communications plan, and was, helped with their partnerships, got a ton of high visibility networking with the not only the members, but people that they partnered with. So she was able to, and she also gained some social media skills that were a little bit rusty because she'd been out and a lot of stuff had changed in that area. So she was able to really, for 5 to 10 hours a week, really use her pro bono time value in a very valuable way. And in return, she was able to network her way into a dream job, which was doing communications for the Edmond School District, which is the school district her children are in. And she also had been around, the market and industry leaders with this association. So she was really confident in what was happening. She was up to date. She was able to talk, verbalize like the new lingo that's happening, all of this stuff. So she just felt really relevant at the end of the day. And so she researched her compensation. She negotiated benefits. She was just really confident because she'd done all her research and she'd been involved. So that's a long way of saying use your time wisely when you're volunteering. So Nancy, we'll go to the next slide. So pro bono to paid is exchanging your services and skills for opportunity to try a new role or industry. Now, I'm also not saying that you have to volunteer for a professional association. You can volunteer at your kid's school or a local nonprofit that's near and dear to your heart, but think about it in a way that, let me volunteer for roles or projects that I potentially can talk about for future work. Right? Make sure that it's aligning with where you want to go, or if you're not sure where you want to go, take on projects that interest you to see if potentially that could be a path of interest, right? Be very thoughtful about what you're doing. You're not just taking on projects that nobody else is taking on. We may still be doing that, but think of them in a different way, that this is a stepping stone for you, okay? This is great for switching careers. Again, you can gain new skills, breaking into nonprofits, build, like I said, build up some skills. One caveat, again, we seem to say this with every path, is this is, again, for a very short time, okay? You don't want to find yourself a year and a half later still doing the same thing for little to no money. Set the right expectations. If you're taking on a project or you're going to do a role, say, I have capacity to do this for 3 months, 6 months. In exchange, this is what I can give. And in exchange, I'd love to meet these people within the industry, if you wouldn't mind an introduction, maybe become a reference, whoever you're working with, all of that, get something in exchange for your time. And then the pros of this path is you're able to leverage it during interviews, and then 20% of roles actually turn into paid work. So if you're volunteering at a nonprofit, 20% of those can turn into paid work. if it's something that you're really passionate about and you get to know the board members or the staff, and there's an opening, they think of you, you're proven because you've been working with that organization. So that could be a really great way to get your foot in the door if you're looking for nonprofit work. And then of course you get exposure to new contacts and networking. And the whole point of networking is to put yourself in places and meet people that you wouldn't normally interact with. That's how you grow your network, and this is a great way to do it. And then of course the biggest con is it's unpaid. So don't stay here forever. This is a strategy to keep moving forward. Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, so how do you know? How do you know which one is the right strategy to pursue? And, you know, we have, again, we've talked with a lot of people. Most people default to one of these 4 strategies, but for you, we want you to design it. And so we're going to give you a hint about how to do this, okay? And this is a discernment exercise that we've run in our past programming. A good way to figure out if one of these doesn't, and I'm guessing for most of you that one of these are naturally going to come to mind where you'll say, oh yeah, that's going to be for me. I'm going to try to take that path. But if it's not entirely clear, what we suggest is that you do a little discernment. So, and you want to write down for every job you've held, and this includes your volunteer roles, what was the organization? What did you do? What were 3 things that you really liked, 3 to 5 things you really liked? And what were 3 to 5 things that you didn't care for? And don't agonize over this. Just write down whatever pops into your head. The reason we want you to do this is you're going to see a trend as you go through these roles. And you'll say, oh gosh, these same things come up over and over again. And then what you'll do is you'll use a highlighter to look for those common trends. And you're going to look in the likes and the dislikes, right? So you're going to look for these commonalities, right? And highlight those trends. So if I were to walk you through, this is my example. Some of you have seen this in the past. I took 2 paid and 1 pro bono engagement, and I wrote down everything I liked and everything I disliked. And what you can see is in the yellow areas, I like things that are new. I like working with people, lots of people in various engagements. And I don't like working for free or being underpaid. And those were things, I can't tell you that I knew that until I went through this exercise. What it told me as I was looking was to think a little bit about, okay, so maybe you don't want to go back to an engagement where you feel that you are underserved. I also found that professionalism was very important to me, and that in whatever capacity I was going to work in, I wanted to make sure that people behaved themselves, if you will. And so the common threads were learning opportunities. I like to learn. Lots of people, externally focused. That's something. Oh, and hi.
We're almost clear to school.
Oh no.
No.
I've got, hold on one sec, honey. I'm almost done. Tell me about it as soon as we're done. We're working from home, everybody. Externally focused, and I like new, okay? What I didn't like, immature or unprofessional behavior, the pay, as I mentioned, or small and slow growth. I like working on things that are going to progress. And so for you, I urge you to do the same exercise, because what it will do is it will give you insight into whatever the next step is going to be. For some of you, you're going to do this exercise and go, you know, all things considered, I really want to go back to what I was doing before. And then you can pursue a boomerang or a lily pad strategy, depending on which way you're going to go at it. For some of you, you're going to say, I liked this part of it and I want to take those skills with me, but I don't want to do that part. Well, then you're looking at more of a try and buy, or maybe a pro bono to pay. So this is a really great way to get the creative juices flowing and move this process forward.